Well, hello there. Welcome in. Oh. How am I doing today? Hold on a second. Fuckers. Anyways. It's Mastery Monday, so we're gonna bait the masters. You know what I'm saying? Masturbate, beast master. Don't worry about it. I'm gonna shoot people in the face, steal their sprites. I'm just kidding about doing that. Wait, what about those? What would you say? What did you say about V-Bucks? Boy, who you lying to? I already know how much V-Bucks you give me. You don't give me enough. Plus, you don't. I don't want to buy it right now anyway. Fuck you on, loser. Keep walking.
Fly across the country, I finished the show and I've been. I got me a milli, I did it legitly. I'm still with the I'm hot. Fly across the country, I finished the show and I've been. I got me a milli, I did it.
Alright. Mythic legendary fight drop more off. The price level of twice as fast, double jewelry close. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see about that. We'll see about that. I don't want to lift T. Is that acting so weird? Oh, it's just a fold, man. We'll buy a new one. Be weird sometimes. I swear. Fucking level this fucker up. Get my sprite dust up. And get him out. Let's do this shit. What the fuck is that thing? I don't know what contrast I have on my phone. Characters anymore. That's where we go. Alright. Picking bets. How long do you think I'll live for? Give it like 10 seconds. This guy's gonna try to fucking shoot me, guaranteed. Or they're gonna try to kill each other. Grab the chest. Grab this chest. You ain't both trying to team up on me, bitch. They were really trying to team up on me. That's crazy. What are you? It's his duos. Mother, fuck my life. Every time. What? Yeah, why? I guess. Not much, but okay. Man, this gun sucks. This gun really fucking sucks. You know what? Come here, bitch. I had enough of your shit. And you still died, so suck my ass. Fuck you. Give me a shit gun. Can you give me another shit gun? God damn you. Why do you hate me so? How did I get stuck in duos again? They really gotta fucking fix this shit. I'm in a solo party. Why would you put me in duos, bro? It makes no freaking sense. Absolutely fuck all sense. Thank you. I haven't used this skin in a while. I started using it again the other day. I guess I should take you, because I'm gonna need more sprite though, so I can get my shit done. How many people am I gonna run into here? Hopefully none. That'd be great. Oh, I think I broke the roof. Come on, damn it! What the hell? I'm stuck. Christola! God damn it, game! I ain't even touch trying to hang on me. Whatever, I got enough help. Not really lit. God damn it. He's already level 4. Almost enough gold to just go buy these babies. So I think I'm gonna do. Grab one here. Okay, grab that. How much gold do I got? I get 100 more. Got this. It looks crazy, but trust me, method to my madness. What the fuck? That band just blew the fuck up. Okay, we need to heal now. Okay. Perfect. Drink, drink. Scared the shit out of me with that mannequin, bro. Fuck, where the hell is it? Ah, it's over there. Down here. My brain went burr. Over here. That. 5. Enough for 2 of these. There we go. And get the hell out of here. Did I ever grab the... You know what? Grab you. Here's bright dust. Check this chest real quick. Heal and then bounce to whatever you call it. Damn it, I didn't do the right one. Shit. Go. Grab you. Grab you. Off we go.
I've fallen and I can't get up.
You've fallen and you can't get up. Well, it sucks to suck, man. I don't know what to tell you. Llama! Get. You know what? Fuck it. Let me extract this one too. I need Sprite dust. There we go. Just spread the word, please. Let's extra spray dust. I don't expect to win this match, by the way. I'm just here to master my sprays and get the hell out. Hold up. See if I can make it. Oh, might actually make it. Made it. Bye, everybody. Oh shit, that's John Wick. I was like, who's that guy? I got the wick. Oh, hello. You heard that? I heard that. I don't like that. Oh, I see him. I don't know how I'm supposed to win this thing. I got no partner. I'm just by myself. The fucking Fortnite used to keep putting me in duos matches when I'm solo. Make that shit make sense. I don't understand it. Fuck, swim with the opposite direction. What is going on? That Danny Phantom. Whoever did about that. Fucker. God damn you, storm sickness. Got him. I'm not getting ignored and everything. Fucking get hit by a car. That's crazy. Flipping that shit. That was good. That's a way to get fucking demons. It's just fucking. I got fucking Truck-kun, bro. Damn. One of my isekai harem now. Bye. Jesus. A fucking Truck-kun in the face, bro. That's crazy. Alright. Solo, dumbass. Solo. Why would I want to be playing duos by myself? That makes absolutely no fucking sense. Get them fucked. Beer fun this time. Oh man, that was funny. Could not do it. It was right. Awkward. It's fucking random. Fuck it. I'm gonna chop. Yo, what's up, boss? How you doing? How you doing? Not much, just mastering some sprites. Chilling. Making dinner after watching Spider-Man. I heard it was good. That's what the consensus is so far. What are you? Oh, fucking duck. Don't give me no packers. I thought it's called nice. I said nobody likes Ranger. Beaver tooth bastard. No. Oh, hi, buddy. I can't hit my shots. Oh, never mind. I don't need you. Just gotta hit one. Hey, yo. He wants to hold my hand. Oops. Oh my god. Funny. Oh well. Yeah. You. Oh. Oh. Apparently they have self-revive. Alright. Almost. That's probably gonna get me killed, but whatever. I need to blow off my dust. Views. Views. There you go. More I extract, the better. And you're maxed. Let's go. Now I need my guns. Heals. Gotta go back and get my other guns. Where is my shotty? Should be over here. Shotty. There we go. Wait, I had another. Fuck it. Whee! That rock looks like a peepee. That works. That also works. shit. Need that. Fuck, go backwards, stupid. I hate that. Man, this car's not able to drive properly. I see people, but I don't want to fight them right this second. Oh, they're not. They want to fight me, apparently. They really just tried to shoot me and shit. Well, you see there's another person there, right? Why are you chasing me specifically, bitch? Follow me, motherfucker. I dare you. Right past it. Fuck off. You had 44 health, you little bitch. Fucking hate you. I got what I needed. Don't think I needed a gummy ghost. Pretty sure the one I'm missing is hollow. I kind of figured you would be on.
Yeah, I know you see the drip and you like it. Wanna text me but your pride trying to fight it. I know you young, chasing love, trying to fight.
What I need to do. You fire. Hello. You know what? You can do that shit.
What's up, buddy?
You
Give me a
just have to
second.
hear it on the stream, though.
Hey, shut your fucking bitch ass up, nigga.
Hey, yo, what the fuck?
What?
I heard this sneaky stuff.
Oh, you playing Minecraft? I like your cut, G.
Yeah,
Oh, damn, I like the cut, G.
I found the. I found a new thing on my for OBS. It allows you to have a soundboard on your stream.
Nice.
Yeah. You're welcome. If I move out, I'm taking it with me. Yeah. I just made chicken pat nuggets in
What
earlier.
the fuck? 309?
What?
You
Oh
gonna lie?
yeah.
Hey, shut your fucking bitch ass up, nigga.
Shut your fucking bitch ass up, nigga.
I am never gonna financially recover from this.
We're gonna financially recover from this. What'd you say? Oh, he went out at like 4:30, 4 o'clock.
My fucking god, this bitch is gay. Good for him. Good for him.
Dude, I found this one and I have no idea what it's from, but I love it.
Nothing more sophisticated than diddling the maid and then chewing some gum.
I don't hear it. I made
Nothing
your
more
stream,
sophisticated than diddling the maid and chewing some gum.
so- What the fuck?
I don't know, but it's great. I seen that probably from like fucking, what was that show? Sex in the City, the other one. With the wives cheating on her husband shit.
That's literally every single white woman, to be honest.
Okay, but it was a specific one. It was the one with fucking Ava Longoria. I think it was her name.
I don't remember,
That one.
to be honest.
Not Cougar Town, but the other one. Can't remember.
Sure.
I am never gonna financially recover from this.
You know what?
Why the fuck I have a naked Batman on my screen after I just sent the driver?
I don't fucking know. Thank you kindly. Oh, I didn't bring a Sprite. What? I know I did pick a Sprite. What the fuck, game?
Did you
Whatever.
forgot the Sprite?
Apparently I
You forgot
forgot
your
Sprite.
McDonald's Sprite?
Forgot my McDonald's Sprite. So sad. How dare I forget my McDonald's Sprite. It's alright, I'll just steal some of those from McDonald's Sprite. Give it to me. Oh my god. Okay, I guess I'll just keep falling. Sure, whatever.
Yeah, it happened to me too. I don't know why.
I didn't even hit the ground that hard to support to make no sense.
The thing is that I didn't even hit the ground either, and literally the game just decided with me to not grab the edge and just keep
I just
falling.
found a Galaxy Ghost. Let's go.
Nice, let's go.
I don't even need it. You want it?
Yeah, sure.
Actually, I already have one. I found one the other day when I was playing by myself. Playing with myself. Ayo. Yeah, have a scooter, man. Was it everything
Yeah,
you wanted?
Spider-Man
and
was
more?
actually really good.
I actually have to go back and watch like all the other ones. 'Cause I'm like probably not gonna understand what the fuck's going on. Unless
Probably.
it doesn't matter if you watch the other ones.
I mean, it gives you more context because you actually need to know what happened with Doctor Strange and that. That's literally the only thing you need to know.
Well, I already know what No Way Home was though. That was the
Yeah, I mean, literally just with No Way Home, you're good enough. Like, if you know like the general thing is,
yeah, I pretty much.
Hey there,
know what Way
runner.
Home's about.
Got some work for you.
like,
Spider
spoilers ahead,
shit.
just forget Spider-Man and Aunt May, that's it.
Yeah, I know Aunt May died.
Yep, exactly. That's the only thing you need to know for this game. Or, well, I mean, for this movie.
Yeah, and then everything that he revealed to his friends, and technically went back in time and never revealed it. Type shit.
Indeed. Not back in time, actually. Just
Or just
try to
reverse.
raise it.
Yeah, they're already coming. They're even another movie coming out in 2027. Beyond
Yeah,
the
and there's time for
Spider-Verse.
quite a lot of movies, but the way there's people around.
Yeah, this one's
there.
gonna be the Sony one.
No, I mean there's people there. I just marking you people.
Oh, I know. I'm just talking about the next movie is gonna be the Sony.
Yeah,
one.
they also make a
Oh,
reference in this movie about Miles.
Oh, ain't that some shit?
Not important to the plot. It just there's just a notch to Miles. That's it.
Interesting. Surprised they haven't made a nudge to fucking Venom in a while.
Yeah, they also made a notch to Venom.
Yeah,
I mean
maybe
that's
another
what they
Venom
tried
movie
to.
then. I still have to watch fucking the last one that came out. Honestly, of all the fucking anti-heroes, I like Venom the most.
Yeah, it's funny because then they made a comic just to explain why Venom is fucking crazy, and guess what? It's fucking Deadpool.
Well, let me guess, he feuded with Deadpool at one point.
Yes, indeed. That's literally why Venom is now insane.
Yeah, explains why he
Yep.
ends up becoming a fucking, what do you call it, demisexual fucking pansy.
I mean, that's mainly because he's a symbiote. They don't have genders. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because for something that doesn't have genders, he has kids eventually.
Oh yeah, because that's how they reproduce. They literally just cut each other like mitosis and that shit. You only need to cut like part of symbiote and then link it with
Oh
someone
yeah, that's
else.
how Carnage
and
was
immediately-
made.
Exactly. That's how Carnage gets born.
Yep, I remember Carnage. I watched that movie.
So,
I
yeah,
love that
in the
movie. Shit was
yeah, in the
awesome.
movie it's probably actually close enough to what happens on the comic. So yeah.
Oh.
And then Carnage does the same thing on purpose, just to have more children. That's how actually one of the children Carnage
There's a
has
Sprite
is
chest
fused
over
with,
there.
Yeah, one of the corpses Carnage is fused with is actually a dead woman. She's already dead. He only that symbiote only used her as a host, and that's it.
Uh-oh, I think they're going for our Sprite chest.
Yeah, probably.
Yep, they're definitely going for that Sprite chest. Oh well. Clearly we're not gonna get to it in time. Oh, there's Sprite. I'll cop that motherfucker.
You know how to take orders.
I hate them. Sticks.
Now,
Oh,
I
nice.
need you to do something.
Oh, it's right fucking there too. Well, ain't that some shit?
Yeah.
Oh, it looks like it was a ghost Sprite. It looked like they left it.
No, they dropped the ghost actually.
Oh, what the fuck is that one?
I don't know what they picked up.
Soccer. And I just got a Poyo. You want the Poyo?
Let's go.
Or you already have it?
Pollo.
Switch out of fucking soccer or striker for
Yeah, I get-
Poyo. Same
You left
shit,
the
basically.
I think you took the pollo.
I did.
Okay.
More money. Oh, sorry, I have fucking plenty of strikers. Apparently, the gem sprites finally come out this weekend. The Iron Mouse sprite was unvaulted.
Yeah. People
Those
start
are
still bullying her for no reason, just because she got a sprite.
Yeah, well, now people are mad because Sea Dog fucking, like, I guess, full-shouldered Rakai or whatever his name is, Ray.
I don't
Some
know
game
them,
or whatever. Because he's so mad about the whole thing with fucking them the Gamer Awards, or Streamer Awards, which I'm like, so what? If you don't like it, you don't like it. You don't have to fucking sit there and act like you're his friend.
Where are you? Oh, there you are.
Over
People
here.
with me, by the way.
Okay, I'm here. He's got the crystal. Oh, what the fuck? Bro, ain't no way you hit me behind that tree. Get the fuck out of here.
How the fuck I... Okay, he's low, he's low, he's low. Gotta go.
He's dead.
There you go. Yeah, behind you, I'm there. Bitch. I don't want to lose my sprite, bro.
I know. Trying. Spence being a dick. He's on that building.
I'm behind you, just in case.
He's pushing me.
Yeah, he's on me. Take his sprite.
Can't see anything. Fuck.
Brother, he's right in front of you. How for some reason you were hitting him? Okay, I just lost my level 4. Right.
Nah, the bush was in my fucking way. I had no point of view. Look at my stream, you see it.
What bush? There was no bush in there.
There was a leaf in my way, dude. I couldn't see it.
No, there was nothing in there, bro. On my screen, there was
I'm telling you,
nothing
look at my stream. You'll see. I was
Let me-
literally
let me-
blinded. I couldn't
let me
see
click.
shit.
Let me just.
Like I started shooting at him and I couldn't see him because 1, you were there, and then 2, I couldn't see through the fucking leaf. Are you talking to me? Or you talking to somebody else?
Oh shit, there was a tree there. On
What are
my
you talking
screen,
to
there
me
was
for?
no tree.
Yeah, what? Oh, fucking Roger board of it. Figured we want. Taylor used to be able to leave out, but he and the. Yeah, it was like $50 on there at Walmart. I figured, fuck it, we need a new air fryer. Left me broke, but what'd you have with the level 4? Nah, I throw it out. You see what I meant, right? Because I couldn't see shit. Like, I was blind as fuck.
Yeah, I see. There was a on your.
That's told
screen,
you.
there was a tree.
I'm fucking lying.
Yeah,
there was
tree,
a
not
fucking
bush.
bush
There
in the
was a
way.
freaking tree for some reason.
It was a big leaf. I know that bush. And it was in my way, and I couldn't see fucking fuck all. What did you lose? The galaxy?
The galaxy. What's a galaxy Earth?
Oh, I got you. I got a level 3 one.
Okay, I'll take it.
I'm gonna bring you the Galaxy Ghost.
You did a
That
galaxy
one's
ghost?
already. Yeah, it's level 5. Oh, that one instead. I also got the Hollow Flow Ghost.
Okay, let me see if I have a galaxy ghost for you or something.
Well, that's the one I gave you. I think you lost it. I think you died.
Galaxy goes. Galaxy Dream Ghost. Why the fuck? I don't have a Galaxy Ghost. I noticed.
Yeah, I just got it recently. It was the only one I did now.
Okay.
But I mastered it already, so I'll just bring it. I'll bring you the Galaxy Earth after.
Yeah, let me.
I still haven't got the 1 Grim. Oh, I also got
Still
the
not a
John
Grim?
Wick one. Nope, the Grims.
Nice.
But yeah, I got the John Wick one. I stole it off a dude in the fucking reload match. Then I was panicking, running around trying to find a goddamn extract, because in that you don't get extracts, you have to find it as an item. So I'm like running around in the storm with a med kit trying to find a goddamn extract so I don't die and lose the goddamn thing. And I got fucking lucky. I gotta clip that shit on the stream later. Or the old stream. I just gotta figure out which one it was. Cause that shit had me fucking that shit had me fucking panicking. I was like, no. This is the first time I got this motherfucker, I'm not losing him. No. Wait. No, wait. Funny enough, same fucking shirts on the fucking Spider-Man. The funny meme.
Where do you want to go? Lately, I've been going to Golden Grove and
Litty Lodge.
We can go to Chop Chop.
Alright. I kind of want to go try
Yeah,
next match. I want to try going to that spot with the fucking glass aquarium that we had to break for that one quest. Because apparently you can find Iron Mouse there. But
Oh yeah.
then
we
again,
can
the
check
person who said it apparently was one of those fucking liar fucking YouTubers. So who knows?
That's true.
It's quite possible we can get it, but who knows? But apparently, well, she wasn't supposed to come out till tomorrow. But apparently she's already out, so I don't understand it. There's 2 people landing here. I'm watching them. Killing them. Down 1 to go. Meet your friends, dum-dum. Fat.
Yeah.
Alright, come get this fucker. I'm gonna take this air spray from that loser.
Like this.
Oh, thanks.
At least you will have something to.
Wait, is that a galaxy
sell.
dream?
Yeah, it's a Galaxy Dream. I already have Master, so that's why I'm giving it to you.
Oh, okay. I think I already have it, but I'll take it. Free money. Free money.
I mean,
Coming. Let's see.
down.
Or not.
Both dead.
Never mind that.
Why there is a Coom Sprite? Oh, Air Sprite.
You know how to take orders.
Which one?
Good.
It's an Air Sprite, but it looks like Boom.
Spread your
Oh,
wings
yeah.
and fly.
It's a cool sprite.
It's Coom Sprite.
Cool sprite. And he's already level 3. That quest is done.
You know what? Send me the bill.
Blue shotty.
Don't duck my calls.
Another green sprite.
May you ruffle my feathers.
This. Okay. I have a rift. You want to go start heading towards the extract or whatever?
Oh, I just extracted the one I already had, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I had the portal extractor eventually. Like, can you extract yours?
Yeah, we can go extra, get ready to start extracting. I'm just trying to open chest to level them up a little bit.
Alright.
Okay. Yep. Gotta go start going before the storm gets there.
Okay.
Well, man, I got a rift, so we're good. Just make
Okay.
sure you get healed on you. Not really. Hold on, don't start it yet. Oh no.
Too late. What happened?
I was gonna use the booster so I can get more sprite from those.
Oh.
Got the press triangle instead of square to activate it that way. For some reason, they make the item a physical thing that you hold, but you can't fucking use it unless you actually like go to the thing and yeah.
Yeah, it happened to me. I was weirded out. Why can't I use the auto extract?
Makes some fucking sense. Well, we're not that far from the store, so.
Oh, there's a proton.
Yep. Oh, I see it.
Why the fuck you change to a gun?
Oh.
No, it does not longer give you X2 XP. Fuck.
No, sadly.
Boring. With so many spies now to master, they don't give you the X2.
Well, they do
Oh, the
automatically in the game mode. You get
Yeah.
double sprite dust and double XP, but yeah, we don't
Okay,
get the
okay.
we don't get the ×4 anymore like we used to.
Yeah. Oh,
With the extra 2. Oh, they're over there. I think I need to get glasses again because I am having really a lot of trouble seeing shit lately. Like, I don't even know what you're shooting at right now. I can't see him. Oh, now I can see him.
one down.
Yeah, I said one over there is pretty low. He's worried about
Oh,
himself. Ah, bitch, you thought. Spider-Man. I am Spooterman.
Spooterman.
Spooterman. I'm emissary from hell, Spooterman. Oh, the sprite chest up here.
Oh, yeah,
Get up
sorry.
there, that is. Oh, I think I ran out of web. What'd you get? Oh, nice.
7.
I have the 7, the Hollow Flail 7, and the fucking Cube 7 or Galaxy 7 already. Got them all the same day. It's crazy.
Noise.
It's honestly shocking. One over here
Where
on
the fuck they are? There
me.
you I see them.
Water. Man, why am I gun with stop missing? Spooterman! Come on, Spooterman, get up there.
Oh. Bro, get better at your aim, bitch. I was staying still and you still missed.
Should I go for reboot? Now you're running like a pussy. You can't escape me, bitch.
Bitch is dead.
Bitch, still running. Got him.
Bitch ass.
Bitch thought you was trying to run away. Bitch, you thought.
Fuck. I couldn't reach. I have to go.
Whee! I'm fucking all the way up. No one can stop me. I'm all the way up.
Reloading. Be right back.
Who said that? Fingers. You see him?
On that building.
Oh, that's far.
There.
Oh, there it is. Hit him for 30.
23 right shield.
$52 shield. Is cracked. Oh, he dead.
Down.
Behind us.
Behind us.
Yep, I see
In
him.
front of us too.
Got him. Woo! Somebody tried to snipe me.
Yeah, I have it.
I'm going
Come here, come
Spooderman.
here.
Spooderman escapes. There's
Oh, no.
Spooderman too. Watch it. Low. Low and running like a pussy.
I have to reload everything. Fuck.
You're fine. I got one. That one might get me though. She's low. I hit her for 35.
What?
She's over there. I think she
I
ran.
know. I tried to see them.
Right there.
Fuck,
Damn it.
I was level 40. My game
That's
lagged when she
how
started
she
shooting.
had she had no healed. Oh, she had a
She
gummy
pulled it.
llama. Oh man, I wanted that.
Bro, I had to extract it at level 4. Fuck.
Damn it. All right, let me equip.
By the way,
my
your
one.
stream is lagging. Well, your model is lagging.
It's always lagging. That's just what fucking Fortnite does to my model for some reason.
All right.
I literally went through my fucking entire computer last night and deleted. I want to say 100,000 files. 200,000 files. Yeah, I had so much shit on there, like between images, art, like copies of my art, and all this other shit. I had to go through and delete all of it. I was like, bro, organizing is a pain in the ass. I hope you die as someone steals your llama, bitch. Oh, do you want me to bring the earth spray? Oh, bad.
You sure you want it?
There you go. I also got the cube ones. Some of them, not all of them.
Nice.
Oh yeah, I got Galaxy Batman, Cube Batman, Hollow Foil Batman, and regular Batman, and I also have John Wick.
Nice.
I do want to get Iron Mouse though.
Remember you. I will
not
yield.
And I also got the banana, Hollow Foil Banana, and the level 5 llama. Oh yeah, I also got the fucking Galaxy Boss finally.
Nice.
Where are you? Galaxy. There you are. Oh yeah, I have level 5 Galaxy Cubers. Or no, I mean Cubers, not Galaxy Cubers. I have level 5 Cubers. I'm gonna bring that one to you.
Cubert. Yeah, give me Cubert.
Cubert. Yeah, my model be lagging all the time now. I don't know what the problem is. It's like as long as I'm inside of the game, it fucking lags. If I'm out of the game, my model stops lagging.
Okay.
I don't understand it. I have to look it up later and figure out how to fix it. There's got to be a way to fix it. Yeah, you missed a backroom stream the other day. That shit was fucking hilarious.
Oh yeah, what's his name? Scene invited me to play, but he didn't give me a date, so I didn't know when the stream was. And then I was playing Dead Space, and when I finished it was like 2 a.m. Then the next day I saw you were streaming at 3 a.m. for me.
Yeah. Yeah, we're doing it again on Friday, but it's gonna be at like 8 p.m. my time, which is gonna be late as fuck for you. So that's why I told him, I was like, we could do me, you, and him could all play together on a weekend or whatever.
Yeah, I can
Because
do it
there's
on a
no way I'm
weekend,
gonna
but-
ask you guys to be up at 3 o'clock in the fucking morning on my time to play fucking Macros to me and Alba.
I can
It's a
do
little
it,
much.
but again, I need to be told in advance, not like what Sin did. He told me the same day without giving me dates.
Yeah, I don't know why he did that. Why didn't even invite
He
him? So I don't know what the fuck
he
was that
literally
about.
just told me, man, Slayer and I want to play Backrooms Rec. Do you have the game? I said, no, but it's $3. I can buy it. Why?
Wait,
he
which,
didn't
which
respond
one
me
did he
after
tell
that.
you? What, escape the back rooms?
Backrooms Rec.
I don't know what that one even is. I don't have that game.
Me either. He just told me
And
something
we
about
were
it.
playing
It's Escape-
Backroom Escape together.
I think the one I have is Backrooms Escape together too. Because
That's the one I
we
bought to
talked
play
about it
with
a while
Alma.
ago.
Yeah. Because it's just a B. E.T. or some shit on the fucking thingy.
Yeah, I guess so. Also,
It says you're not ready up, by the way. I don't know why.
I'm ready up. Okay, let me ready up again then.
Yeah, I just went back to
There
the
you
lobby
go.
because it was being weird.
Yeah, it's doing it over again. Okay, I'm ready now. I don't know if on you. I
Yeah,
will
I'm
go
ready.
back
Yeah.
to- oh,
Now
okay.
it just unreadied me. What the fuck?
Yeah, I'm going back to lobby. This game is stupid.
Oh.
Sure.
Sure, yeah, sure. But no, fucking, yeah, we were playing the Backrooms Escape together, man. It was really funny. You got Uncle Larry chasing me. I found fucking Uncle Larry, and then Uncle Larry brought Aunt Molly, and then Aunt Molly brought her son, cousin Tristan, and we're just trying to fucking flashlight the motherfuckers away so they stop flashing. They were all naked.
What the?
Yeah, I got so many fucking clips I posted on like TikTok and YouTube. They're all fucking hilarious. I better run before someone starts targeting me. My ass was landlord grass. Alright. I think, yeah, it's down here where I'm thinking of going.
I'll
Feel
go
like
there
it.
then, to the dock.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's go.
I just got off work a couple hours ago. I'm fucking ready for bed. Oh, there's a quacker boats there too.
Yeah, I told you there's a whacker boat.
It's a wigger.
Damn Quakers.
Fucking needy. I'm
By
gonna start
the way,
saying
I
that now,
also-
by the way, instead of the other
You
word.
like when, like,
It's fucking
instead of
funny.
Giblert?
Yeah. I'm just gonna start calling people Niggy now. She don't bitch ass up Niggy. My Niggy, my Niggy.
You get rid of that G ass haircut, you maybe get some bitches on your dick.
Maybe.
Niggy.
Niggy. Oh,
Holy
me,
map.
Junior. Here, take this little shit.
Oh, that's you know, some black guy.
I'll be down here if you need me. Right, City. Right, City. Alright. Careful when you come in here.
Why?
Because of that.
Okay.
Nope, I see no Iron Mouse here. Java lied to. Definitely didn't have a face. Oh, found a llama though if you want it.
Sure.
There you go.
Which?
Yeah, problem. That's got that luck, bro. We bring hollow foils or not? Yeah, we bring like 2 hollow foil waters. We probably find plenty of fucking rare spice we were looking for. Also, the game also gives you a visor now that will automatically guarantee to give you a sprite that you don't have.
Damn, nice.
Yeah,
Bro,
so if you
my
have
full
that.
inventory is full of sprites though. I need to extract actually.
Yeah, you can go
Just
check
for
the soccer
safety.
fields nearby.
Yeah.
I can also try to get a soccer sprite. Oh, the game came here, to be honest. It's kind of like one of those dead zones. That a Llama Crystal?
Llama Cruci?
Yes, it was. Llama Cruci?
De la Musi?
La Busi? Llama Cruci? La Busi? On my way.
Yep.
Just grabbing some shields, so in case I gotta fight.
Oh, there's a peanut.
Oh, nice.
Peanut at the same time.
Heat up, but no Iron Mouse? The fuck?
Bro, my full inventory. I have no weapons though. If
Yeah.
someone comes, I'm dead.
Yeah, that happened to me a couple times actually. Shit. Kill it! Well, got a soccer.
Go for it.
Ah, you bitch.
Was too late?
Yeah.
Damn.
Oh wait, I can kick the ball in again. Can I get another soccer?
Can I get a Hoya?
Can I get a Hoya?
Oh
Can I get a hee hee?
Can I get a soccer? Nope. Reaction sites are
Can I get the
friendly.
black one?
Well, that's nice to know because we're already friendly, bitch.
Nice.
You know how to take orders.
Search chest for the sprite equipped.
Now,
It's literally just doing
let's
that,
have
bro.
some fun.
Okay, so I'll go search some other chests and here we go. Oh, there's someone here.
I'm with you. Behind you.
Bye, Hannah.
Don't forget.
Hannah, park that ass on this dude.
Where your friend? Oh shit! I saw.
Probably around here being a little bitch.
Like Carol Baskin.
That bitch, Carol Baskins. I'm never gonna financially recover from this. Oh, there he is. Goodbye. I hit
Goddamn,
every
Rosie.
shot, which is crazy. Because I usually don't hit any shots. Damn, that's crazy. Okay, I'm gonna go check this house out real quick. There's a chest in there I need. Well, I don't need it, but I want to open it. Open the fucking wall, bitch. It's a window. Let me in. You fucking cunt. Game? Really?
Fucking cunt.
Dirty fucking cunt.
Well, damn it. What a fucking cunt, mate. You know.
Motherfucker, I was about to open that. I need one more damn chest. This stupid quest. Damn it. I can't find a single chest. Yeah, 'cause I can't find no chest. I can't find no titties. Hold up. Oh, they're all on the other side of the fucking map.
Oh, there's
Oh,
just over
one.
there.
Yeah, I see it.
Just Tuesday.
Just pussy. There we go.
Impressive work. I'll be in touch.
Oh, look, a key. I'll take it.
Kiki.
Kiki.
Kiki, do you love me like a body?
Kiki, do you love me? No.
Okay.
I like you cut G.
She said, do you love me? I tell her only body. I only love my bed. I'm a mom. I'm sorry.
Truth. That was the most realest fucking lyrics I ever heard in my life, by the way. Because I was like, bro, that's literally me. I love anyone but my bed and my mama.
What did you say about my mama?
What you say about my mama, little nigga? What you say about my mama, nigga? Is the chest still there? No. Oh wait, no, that still is. That's crazy. Oh, I have 2 rifts. What the fuck am I doing with my life?
I don't know.
Where you at? Are you fighting?
Sometimes. No?
Oh, well, there's gunshots.
I don't know. That's on my side.
This fucking flies pissing me off.
What if we...
Ready?
What if... Oh, there you go. Yep.
Wah.
Give me full, give me fire. Give me full, give me fire, one more time. Ooh.
I think they already got it. The niggas got it.
Niggas there too.
Well, I got you right out of the deal.
Oh, nigga there here.
That's crazy.
We got nigga there.
I'm about to go shut his bitch ass up, nigga.
Oh, how there are 2 niggas. Oh.
Oh, there's one behind me. Fuck. Alright, I'm down. Goodbye.
Spar nigga.
Nigga, no.
AKA Miles Morales.
Word. What's the nearest? I'd rather redo that over here. Oh, here it is.
Thank God I didn't have any more to spite on me.
Yeah, sadly I do. Not that I
Yeah,
like
hurry
really
up.
need them,
I mean, you already have it in,
Oh, I own all of them. I just fucking want to fucking extra sprite this.
You're
Why
a,
do I
you're a
keep getting
fucking
fucking-
sprite?
Yeah, I want to fucking sprites right in the ass. Hey, Vault, clump.
Bet they work like a nice flashlight. Or do be
I bet
like
they
a cool
would,
feeling.
honestly.
I mean, water
They'd
sprite
be
would
like
be
an
like, I
auto
think
hole.
one of the best ones.
Yeah, it's like an Eevee. Or fucking evolution.
Vaporeon, yeah. I mean, water sprite probably will feel like like fucking a slime shit.
Get you
something
nice
like
and
that.
wet, that's for sure. Oh, I found the hollow water.
Nice.
Taking that
Just
shit.
looting.
He's my niggy now.
My niggy, my niggy.
My niggy, my niggy. My motherfucking niggy.
Mama fucking niggy.
I ain't find health, so
I just there's health on top of the building, by the way, and I have
Nice.
a spray bottle.
Alright.
Bottle of juice. There you go.
No, I'm already up top.
You said health, bitch. I gave you health.
Well, no, I need shield.
That's different. I don't have anything. Sorry. Sorry, mate. I can't help you with that.
Sorry, Sin. Sorry. Fucking
Sorry,
mate.
bitch, Niggy.
Look, Niggy, I want to hear your shit, Niggy. Get your fucking bitch ass up, Niggy. Well, that need help. Man, you guys just like breaking through glass, don't you? There you go. Found one.
Where's this nigga at?
I don't know, but I hear him.
I hear him too.
I think they're by the extract. Maybe.
Oh, if they go to the extra, I got them like a one shot or something for them. Oh, we are on the zone. We have to actually move now. They're gonna come for us.
I'm starting the extract. Fuck it.
By my niggy.
My Niggy. I'm gonna get on top of the hill. I'm gonna wait.
I'm gonna say niggy all the time. Thanks to
My
you.
father, Geno, is back. After all this time. He always wanted perfect
You made me
control.
raise Siggy.
And until he gets it, he's tormenting us.
You're like 2 more
Provoking
minutes.
Foundation, hurting Jones, stoking distrust between our
Oh,
allies.
look, they're coming.
We've been feeling hopeless because he wants us to. He likes taking everything away
Told you
until
they'd
he's
come.
the only answer left. But I'm not letting my father win.
Brother, I have no help.
That's fine.
I cannot help you.
I was just to my sprites. I don't give a fuck. If I die, I die. That's what it is. I was getting my damn sprite dust. They ain't stealing my shit without me getting in there. Fuck those niggies.
Fuck them niggas.
Fuck them niggies. You can blame the soundboard for that shit.
My
that's
fucking god, this bitch is gay. Good for fame.
That's no right.
Good for fame.
Hey, shut your fucking bitch ass up, nigga.
I fucking love it. It's so dumb.
Can I hit some shots, please?
Apparently not. What's poppin', cuh? Ain't no much going on, cuh. Just chillin', cuh. Boss about to break this dude's bones.
You're rest.
Res these nuts.
Nigga Fuck you, nigga.
Hey, shut your fucking bitch ass up, nigga.
Oh, I gotta fix the sound bite because apparently I never fixed it. Edit.
I see the niggas there on the bush.
Oh shit.
Depends on me.
Bro, watch you win this shit.
That will be fucking dope. That shit happens.
Fuck this shit dope. Where the fuck is it? Bruh.
What the fuck up?
Wait, are they in Storm? Are they stupid? Yep, he dead. There's one player left, bro. You got this.
He's on the storm. He made the jump. Oh,
I got bullets. He's literally just running.
Brother,
he's got Spooner Man. Nah, that gun's awesome. Just aim at him. There you go.
Reload, bitch.
You got a shotgun?
No. I'm gonna fucking die because I got stuck in a fucking parasol. I literally have my guns have so much recoil I cannot aim.
That's crazy. What's up, class?
And I got stuck in, and I literally got stuck in a fucking parasol. I was not able to move anymore.
That's crazy.
How the fuck I just last so damn long?
I don't fucking know, man. Oh, wow. What else do we need? Honestly, I don't really care about Mastermind at this point. I will bring you John Wick. That's level 5. So don't get it losing.
Oh, I got Spitfire Quack.
Guess I don't have my yay one anymore. Don't fuck me. Never mind, I'll find it later.
Nothing is impossible. Possible. Possible.
That's possible.
What a beautiful day for coming.
True.
My fucking god, this bitch is gay. Good for him. Good for him.
Hey, shut your fucking bitch ass up, nigga.
I have too much fun with this shit right now.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man? Get your ass on, boy. You get your goddamn ugly ass on.
Why is the thing waiting to ready up? Bro, I did ready up.
You're not ready up, bitch.
I wasn't ready up the whole fucking time. This game is retarded. Fucking stupid. Got your fucking bitch on me. Oh, nice. I got a sprite locator. Okay, and now it's gonna fucking not have much right quick, right? Yeah, okay. Alright. I'll come get mine in a minute.
Nothing more sophisticated than diddling the maid and then chewing some gum.
Diddling the maid and chewing some gum.
Mastery Monday.
Want to try that spot again?
Yeah.
And let's fucking go. No, I'm not gonna lie to you, Chad. I did play a little bit of Dino Blade last night. But I didn't get that far. I was just exploring the woods. And then I got to the next boss fight, and I was like, ah, wait till last year, man. That game is fucking fun, man. I already got through like 2 whole areas. Dino Blade. I bought the full version of the game the other day, and I played through the first 2 bosses. The first one, after beating it in the demo, was like easy enough, but then fucking the Brachiosaurus one was fucking bitch. And then I beat him, and the game glitched, so it didn't count me as beating him, so I had to go back and fight him again. I was so mad. And it took me like 2 tries after that, but I beat him again. He's one of those, you can get close and attack, but you have to like back up as soon as he goes to use special attack, or else you're gonna get your ass fucking destroyed. Type bosses. So, ranged slash fucking close quarters combat isn't very important. I forgot they still have snipers in this game. Oh yeah, supposed to be giving you this armor. Bunch of loot, ranger pistol, no iron mouse. Seven here though. Nice. How'd you go? Oh, Joey's over here. Or not. Boy, if you don't go pick up that damn Sprite.
I pick it up.
They did, it's over there. It's outside.
I have it. I have
picked
it
up
here.
the 7
It's in my hand.
Sprite. There.
It's a 7 Sprite. I have it in my hand.
That's not the one I brought for you.
Yeah, that's the one you marked in here.
Yeah, but I was bringing you this one and you ran off.
Oh, John Wick. Okay, you saw you was saying 7, so I thought you were talking about the 7.
No, I said, oh, there's a 7 Sprite here. I didn't mean come get the 7 Sprite. I meant come get the John Wick Sprite.
Oh, okay.
No fuck, I care about the 7 Sprite. You already have that. Plus, we can find that shit anywhere. It's very common.
Oh, people landing here.
Of course they are. They probably smelled the wick.
They smell the blood and dog.
There's blood in the water. Get at the sharks. I get the old station
blood in the
Jeopardy.
The rise of the great, the son of the daughter. What you gonna do with this blood in the water?
Probably die. Guess I'll die. I know I saw this bitch run behind a rock. Where'd she go?
Where is? Okay.
I could have sworn I saw him over there.
Yeah, right next to you.
Were they really? Oh no, you die, bitch. I laid him out. Like a bush.
I see them.
Don't worry about it, I got him.
Yeah. There's some. Okay, nice.
Yeah, they're dead.
Let's move, but no, it was the other guy.
What are we gonna have behind that bush? Bitch, you thought.
Bitch, I thought you do.
We're in this area, huh? Let's see if I can give me something. You know what I'm saying? No, I'm not gonna be able to something up, bro. Dylan, I'll save you. Busted all the windows on the way out. Girl, if you don't run your ass over here. Oh, by that died storm. Stupid ass bitch.
This game really needs to improve their NPCs intelligence.
How many times are you gonna tell me to pick this shit up?
My father, Geno, is back.
Yeah, we get it. Geno's your
After
father.
all this
Nobody cares.
He always wanted perfect
Cool piece of lore.
control. And until he gets it, he's tormenting
Check that
us.
place out.
Provoking Foundation, hurting Jones,
Okay.
stoking distrust between our allies. We've been feeling hopeless because he wants us to. He likes taking everything away until he's the only answer left. But I'm not letting my father win.
So you have daddy issues. Got it.
Oh, bitches. So here's.
Clankers? We got clankers?
Yeah, clickers on me.
I'm not. If I can get at this fucking window, that'd be great.
137.
Were they near me?
Down, bitch.
Clanker. Well, clinkety clank clank that bitch.
Yeah, that was a nice headshot I just gave that bitch.
Good. Where's the other one?
I don't know. Bitch didn't die right away, so. Let's fucking go.
There you go, John Wick now.
How are the clankers?
Now, where's the flankers?
Oh. Galaxy. Okay, that's something at least to have.
What?
I got a Galaxy Water, but I already have Master, so it's gonna help at least to have a weapon on me. Well, I mean, a sprite on me.
That was a lot cooler than I thought it would be. Way more cooler than I thought it would be. Yeah, no way. I was like, oh shit, that's kind of good. Did I do that?
Did I do that?
Did I do that?
On the entrance, I saw someone moving. It's Ninja.
Yeah. Correction, it was Ninja. It's almost dead.
No.
Got rid of it real quick.
Oh, behind me, behind me. Oh, that's Dylan. Oh, fucking.
Don't scare me like that. Oh, Ninja's still here.
125. Get down.
Like I said, correction,
I hear
was
a car.
Ninja. There's another guy in front of us. Reloading, he can't hit for shit, so there's that. Oh, now you want to hit for shit, huh?
There we go.
Die.
Behind us.
Shit, there's someone on me!
Behind
There's
us.
someone on me! Ah, fuck.
There's two teams on us.
Oh, I don't see the one banana. Barely just fucking came out of nowhere.
Why the fuck I have the freaking grenade and then the game decided that it's the perfect time for me to reload? Why do I have to reload? I have the grenade on my hand.
Probably for the same reason it likes to pick the perfect time for me to decide to crouch when I'm fucking got the grenade out. Like, that does fuck all for me.
This game is fucking stupid. I had my grenade out. I was just like pressing the shot and then just took out the fucking SMG and decided to reload right away.
Well, I mean, come on. It literally put me in a duos match when I was solo. It doesn't surprise me at all. Let's see. Need that I have to get that I probably need to master anyway at some point. I need to master the Peelies.
Well, obviously it is Peely and Sung Jin-woo in the same team.
Okay. You know what? I got Cube fucking Fishy. I'll give you that one. Well, first I gotta master it. Ugh. Oh, I didn't remember. Ugh.
I 610 a guy and he immediately disconnected.
Jesus. That's what I come back to. It's crazy.
Oh, I love when I have this perfect timing shit.
Poor Nikki.
Fortnite on la papaye.
You boys,
La
poor Nikki.
papaye.
He saw that shit and said, nope, I'm out, bye.
Yep. Yeah, too much Fortnite for today. Too much 6-7 Uzi for me.
No. We got company.
I know.
Why do I feel like they're coming for me because I got the fucking cube spray?
I have a Galaxy Sprite too, so they're probably coming for us. Both of us, actually.
Oh yeah, they're right on me.
I know, I tried to go to
One
you.
down, fuck.
Come to me.
Can't. Fucking roll the wrong way.
How the fuck I just hit you 25 times and still missed? He's coming for you, by the way.
I'm aware. I'm trying to crawl away.
I'm trying to go for you, buddy. Just a sec.
I just went down, just went down. Come down the hill. Behind the rock. No, he knows exactly where I am, bro.
Cheater, probably.
Or a little gay fucking stalker bitch. He's right there. Haha! That's what you fucking get, bitch. Target these nuts. Ooh, look what they had.
Ooh,
I'm taking all their shit. I'm taking all your shit, you little bitch.
This guy is either a stream sniper or he is
a bad stream sniper.
He's a really bad stream sniper. I mean, in order to be a stream sniper, you need to know what to play.
You actually know
how
how
to play,
to fucking like. You actually know how to beat me, bitch. Which you didn't. So suck a dick.
Oh, bro, I think he was a stream sniper because now you were with 3 people. Now you're only 1.
I don't know.
Oh, with me? With anybody? Me?
You and Vault should be here, so that technically wouldn't count as.
Brother. What's wrong with you, bitch?
I don't know. There's another one down the hill though.
Oh, Batman. This is fucking ugly. I love it.
didn't mean a stream sniper and sucking at it. It's crazy.
Yeah, like, dude, imagine me a fucking stream sniper and still miss everything you wanted to do.
Word. There's a lot more about him than it does us.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to level him up one more level. Always watching. I'm always watching Mike Lukowski. I'm always watching. Bro. Bitches thought they were going to my Sprite. They were sadly mistaken. There's somebody here, somebody here, somebody here.
Yeah, I hear footsteps, I hear
Zip line.
footsteps, so.
They're about to zip line.
Dead. Nice.
Bitch, you thought. You really fucking thought. That worked out for you. Thanks for the money that I needed. Oh, no, I don't have enough. Fuck. Actually, let's just have open this chest to be good. Let's go.
Where are you? Take this.
Oh, thanks. Alright, let's see. Do I have a portal extract? I think I do. Yes, I do. So, swap you. Extract you. Fully mastered. Nice. Swap you. Grab you. I can extract the other three. These guys really thought they were gonna steal my Sprite. Got murdered. Lost all their Sprites to me. And help me master my Sprites. I can basically fucking rub it in their damn face. Love it. Can't beat that shit. Gotta love when a plan comes together and a teammate's better than their fucking teammate. Get in, bitch, we're going shopping.
Why the car moves so damn slow?
Because we're on dirt road.
Damn.
If we get the actual road, it'll go a lot faster. Okay.
Still moves slow for me.
Like, I don't know, it's a car, what do you want me to say? Doing 62 miles an hour according to the game.
Damn, that feels like 40.
So now it's 43.
No, I mean, they were on the street, it felt like 40.
Yeah.
Oh, bigger?
That was whooshed.
We got some George Bush in here.
Stupid Bush. Some solid bushwhacking did there.
Damn, bro. Nice bush.
Nice bush. triangle, not fucking square. Fucking stupid. There we go. Now I got to do first track. Let's go. Well.
Oh?
Fucking Volt.
I'm clumping. Oh my god.
I'm clumping it so hard.
Oh my god, I'm about to clump.
It clumped.
He's clumping his Trabi. The Forbidden Forest.
I caught Dobby clumping his Trabi in the Forbidden Forest.
Oh, they pick out the rest truck.
Somebody's here.
That's me. Oh, I see a zipline.
He did. He had to reload.
Nice.
He double did.
I hear gunshot. Okay, I see them over there. Bro, you really thought? This bitch thought.
I really did. What the fuck is that? Balloon?
Then for the shotgun, bitch.
There's people fighting over there.
I know.
Too soon.
Yeah.
Shit happens. I'm getting shot up from behind. Where are you, bitch? Found him. Bro, how you shooting when you got low health?
Bro. Fuck you, Juji.
125.
Fuck you, Jumper.
But you
I
call
love this
him
fucking
Juji?
sniper. Yeah, Juji Tadori, and the second one was John Wick.
Oh.
Just for you know how much today with Jujutsu Kaisen though.
Oh shit, behind me, behind me, behind me. Fuck, I'm dead.
I'm dead too. Shit.
I'm not dead yet. I'm running.
They're following me by the way. I'm dead probably.
I can tell.
Yeah. I mean I extracted one time to extract, so who fucking cares for me?
Exactly. My only concern is extraction. I don't think they found me. Shit. There. This fucking boot's gonna give me away. Alright, push me the fuck out of here, girl, above you. Shit. Storm's there. Oh, my kingdom for a fucking medkit. What kingdom? I don't fucking know. Go ahead against Aunt Molly. There's no way they can still be over there, right? Got charged. Good. I'm trying to get the fuck out of here.
There's one in here, and the other two are in storm.
Okay.
Oh, you have no health. Okay.
Oh, there's one over there.
Oh, yeah. One here.
Yeah, I see it. Oh, fuck, there's one up here.
Thank God.
Great, they're coming.
Oh, shit. Run.
Alright, I'm going. Bye.
I'll follow you.
Get the fuck out of here, loser.
Oh, there's...
I couldn't even keep the car upright.
Oh, shit. I fucked up.
Shit, I can come back and get you. I'm coming.
It's okay. I'm going next to you.
Get in, bitch, for going out.
I'm inside.
I'm trying. I hate when the fucking thing drives like shit.
Run, Nikki, run!
I'm running for my life!
Oh, fuck. We got another car now. Oh, there's two beaches on top there.
Fuck. Mr. Negi's coming for us, bro.
Okay. Niggi's on Paris.
No.
I need weapons in general. I'm fucking dead.
Here,
again.
take this.
It's gonna be a little bit harder because everywhere.
I just shot John Wick in the face. You're stealing our van! No, you're not, bitch.
What?
Motherfucker. I don't know. Let's go! Fuck you, Niki! No, you take my barrel, you bitch! Bob Slim! This wasn't bad when I got isekai earlier. Literally my first fucking match. I'm 1v fucking 8. And I'm fighting people from behind. Yeah. Next thing I know, a car just comes out of nowhere and plows me and the guy in front of me.
Brother, I threw the freaking like booster grenade, and then they just immediately killed me. I just start flying into the car.
Fuck, that's fucking crazy. We got isekai, bro. That's crazy. Oh shit! All right, I now have that one finished. So I'm gonna bring you the fishy.
Okay.
You go to lobby so I can get my extra.
Oh man, that shit was fucking amazing.
That was wild. It's missing out right now.
Wow.
Oh man. Yeah, no time I got reincarnated to battle right now. Nah. I was getting reincarnated into my isekai harem, bro.
The time I got reincarnated into Truck-kun.
That time Truck-kun isekai'd me and I became his wife.
And one of the taxis, NTR.
Pretty much. That time I got isekai'd into the battle bus.
That time I got isekai into Morning Making Glory.
Morning Glory Milk Farm.
Yeah, that one. I will forget the name. I know there is like Glory and Milking and Monster.
Minotaurs and
under them.
chicks getting fucking sexually assaulted.
Yeah. And women call it romance.
Exactly. We don't want to sexually assaulted. There's a lot of people who don't want to go to
I will act like I understand what you said.
I don't like that either.
I heard Google. There's like
Like
people
Google
on
movie.
us.
I'm aware.
There's speeches in here. That time I got reincarnated into John Wick.
Time I got reincarnated into your mom.
Okay. Can I? Fuck off.
Good work.
Hope the Niggy who was following me
Let's
get
see what that
gun,
baby
better
can
gun
do
than
to
me
mine.
because I just got a shotgun. I'm gonna go fuck his ass up.
I fuck this Niggy.
Fucking Niggy.
I'm getting shot at.
I found chicken.
Well. Like a monster of flame, bro.
I'm coming. Oh,
Okay,
you got them both. Let's go.
Yeah, this nigga's on a hot flame.
I'm trying to stream snap again. Failing horribly at it.
Probably. That's why I stopped putting
That's why I'm
TV on me.
I'm reincarnated as a demon lord.
I don't remember who said that shit, but someone saying like, I know that that time I got reincarnated, like a vending machine does not have a really good power scaling system, but at least the main character is not a pedophile.
What the fuck?
It's a reference in people saying that more anime should be like Mushoku Tensei, and the main character is literally a sex predator.
That's crazy.
Yeah, literally on the first chapter, what he does is just raping child. Most of his wives are literally children.
But isn't he a vending machine?
No, I'm talking about Mushoku Tensei.
Oh. Why the fuck would they want it to be like that then?
Because the people saying that it's like the best power scaling system, and the guy is so damn cool because he has so many wives, and like, dude, 99% of his
children.
wives are literally child.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And non-ironically, that the vending machine is actually peak. It's really funny.
I haven't watched it yet.
When you can, give it an opportunity.
Yeah. I was watching this one video about a really fucking dark manga called Children or
There are
some
quite
shit.
a few. What?
This one was called Children, I think. And
I
I was like,
don't know
dude,
which one it is.
gets basically sent. It's a newer manga. It's really fucking dark. Basically, dude gets sent to fucking take care of an orphanage of kids, and the kids are all basically fucking like murderers for the Yakuza.
Oh.
And like the fucking chick who runs the orphanage was the guy's girlfriend back when they were kids. And he was basically like a fucking sociopath and fucking killed her mother. So she basically lived in that place by herself for years waiting for him to come back, while also being like assaulted and shit by the Yakuza and forced to become a fucking murderer for them. And then also forced to make kids murderers for them too.
Oh god damn.
Oh yeah, it's really
it's
fucking
actually-
twisted. There was a lot of death and kids murdering other kids and shit. Really bad. Oh yeah, there's a fishy for you.
Oh, thank you.
I think it just literally came out recently because someone did a video on it on YouTube, and I was like, "What the fuck is this shit?" And apparently, it's only like it's only 2 books. Yeah. So, literally
It's
fucked
the
up.
boosted box, by the way.
I know. That's why I dropped mine off. Also, where's the damn soccer ball so we can get our suckers?
Oh, there's a. What's it there?
Of course, it's a storm. Damn it, ball! There you go.
Oh, Galaxy Dock.
Galaxy Dock?
Galaxy Dock. Yeah, I got a Galaxy Dock.
I think I have that one already. I can help you level it up if you don't have it yet.
You can what?
So I can help you level it up, like get you some duck chips or whatever.
Okay.
Quackers.
Damn quackers.
Damn quackers. Chest is in there, so it's pretty slow.
No, there's like a. No, wait. There's a window here.
I was faster.
Another band.
Oh look, Batman.
I just extract him.
I'll take it.
Okay.
Back music later. Also, I can extract some more money. I like money.
Money. Manusi.
I like that Manusi.
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm gonna come.
By the way, you have these here.
Oh, come on, game, hurry up. You're all late for this shit. Die soon, but
Come here, bro. Come here. Okay,
I'm
there
here.
was literally a bonfire.
Oh, I'm alive. I'm here, bud.
There was a bonfire in here. Bro, okay.
I'm here.
Okay, let's go.
Not that far away.
Hey, let's go. Okay, let's go.
Oh yeah, there's also juice right here too.
Oh.
Hey, look, a Hollow King.
Hollow King.
Nice.
There you go. Oh, it's a cold water, okay.
I'll take it. Oh.
Okay.
I can fucking see it. I don't even see it. It's just like invisible to me. I was behind the rock. That's why.
Disappear, actually.
No, he's behind the rock.
Okay, sorry.
He's like slowly moving around it weirdly. Gain 3 XP, bonus 3 XP from elimination. Fuck, I'm gonna let you do that. Pushing us. Oh no, we're still in circle. We're good.
Yep.
Oh, here,
I
chest.
may
Oh, the
be
chest right here.
able to Where are you? Oh, there you go.
And this the
I
building
may
down
be
the
able
road.
to finish the pass. Oh, where is my fucking parachute? What the fuck? I pulled it off and I still hit the ground.
This fucking game, I swear.
I swear. Thank God I have this. But goddamn, I could use it in a better opportunity. Okay. This game something to be shit.
Oh, there's a chest upstairs, I
I
think.
hear it. Even more upstairs for me. If you want
There's
this
another
shit.
one. I found the web shooters.
Nice. You keep them. I stuck with them.
Alright, let's stay on the web shooters. I'm gonna check the other building. Oh, never mind. You're beat me to it. Oh, what the fuck?
What? It
Look at my
happened to you
health.
too, right?
Yeah. I tried to pull out the web shooters, they didn't activate. And didn't even give me time to
just
pull out my
watched the shit.
fucking...
It happened the same to me with the parachute.
Yeah. They were recharging and I didn't
Where the fuck are
have
you?
time to pull
There
out
you
my
are.
parachute. I'm healing.
Take that if you need it.
Oh, I found a hollow.
Nice.
Hollow water. I'll take it. Swap it out.
What happened to you?
I was beaten.
Okay. You were staying still for a little bit too long, too much.
Oh Lord, I'm about to bust.
Acaba tu labubuso. I hear gunshots.
Yeah, I hear them too.
I need to extract, man.
You don't have a portable
no.
anymore?
Nope. I waste them all.
Where's the nearest extra?
On them.
Up there. Fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, no, it's not that far. Could be able to make it.
Yeah, but it's where they are right now.
Is it?
I heard gunshots in that direction. I hope I'm wrong.
Well, that's independent, that's all. Here, I'll start it. We'll get out of the way. Let them push it. Somebody died over here.
I mean, there.
Yeah, I see him.
I'm gonna stay hidden for a while.
They're coming up.
I'd rather just extract and die.
No, they're going the other way.
Risky right now.
We're good for now. We're good for now.
They're not eating the bait.
Nope. Not
Oh, there's a llama in there.
guys.
I'm gonna go for extracted.
Where you at? Storage pushing us now.
That's what I'm doing.
Okay.
Let's go.
Damn it, Storm.
Oh shit, they keep gunshots.
I'm not even gonna make it. It's a damn storm. Here you go.
On there.
Where?
I just marked them on the.
Let's see.
I don't know what it is.
The train
125, I hit them.
whatever. They're running. Oh, there's more on us.
Up there. Careful. They are on both
Probably up here.
angles. Yeah, I saw.
They're running away from over there.
How the fuck I missed that shit?
I don't know, but this guy's trying to hit us over there.
He's just punching you, bitch ass.
He's almost cracked. I think he left. Nope, he's still fucking up there trying to shoot me. What a pussy. I have no health. I gotta go. Fuck, I'm dead. Yeah, I'm dead. Storm got me.
Yeah, okay.
How are there still 8 players left in the circle that spawn? Makes no fucking sense.
No, I cannot be the hero and try to track you. Ah, shit. Where they at? I don't see them. I hear them out.
Oh, way too many people for you to be right now.
Who the fuck shot me? What? Oh, it was one from behind.
Nah, I know exactly what happened.
What happened?
She was using the fucking John Wick pistol and she threw the clip at you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, she can throw the clips. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's just do
I didn't
damage,
know
bro. I saw her throw. I saw her lop it at you. I was like, wait a minute.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, when you reload, you throw the clip at in the direction of the enemy.
Oi.
It's actually pretty broken. Because you hit him with it, like, fucking.
Oh, well, I
almost
have,
kill him.
I have the portable extractor.
Nice. What else do I need to bring?
You need to bring some pussy, bro.
You can bring me some. Fuck you mean? You got some. I need some. So, fuck it, I'm gonna bring Hollow Peely. Problem is that fucking thing makes us a target, so be prepared to fight.
I mean, I have the extraction here, so I can.
Oh, yeah, because it pings rare sprites and people who have rare sprites, but it also shows their location. Fucking annoying.
Right here, so we'll just bring a regular fire just to have protection after extracting these bitches.
Hmm.
I think I'm actually gonna finish this pass this season. It's been a while since I finished a pass in Fortnite.
Yeah, I mean it's a long season, so
Yeah, I mean I finished the season of the Power Rangers obviously because that's when I came back and just start getting addicted. Then I completed the next 2 passes and then I stopped playing. And now I'm just playing a little bit again.
yeah, we still got a bunch of quests and shit. Yeah, dude, to finish fucking Slum stuff anyway, so I think we got at least a couple more weeks before it's over. Fuck off, weirdo. This guy's gonna stalk us, watch.
Yeah.
Hell, you're gay.
I love how oh, let's remove it. Okay. I love how Sin and I just rage bait you into buying the pineapple apple pen emote.
Wait, the what?
It was that Sin and I got the pineapple apple pen emote, and then we used it so much we rage bait you into getting it too.
I didn't buy it.
You didn't buy it? I thought you bought it.
No,
okay.
I think you bought it.
Oh, okay. Where do we want to land? The
I
boat?
was gonna buy it, but it was gone. That's why I come back from the store.
Man, we're in the game, by the way.
I'm where?
Okay, because you're not moving, so I'm just telling you just in case.
I put it in my mouth.
Yeah, just telling you just in case. That's why I said the phrase just in case.
Your mom.
I'm being followed, by the way.
No, I'm aware.
Your
That's what I
mama
figured
did.
was gonna happen.
Bitch ass, you tried to follow me? Fuck off. Your mama gay too.
That's why I didn't immediately land. I knew they were gonna follow us. One way to counteract a stalker is be smarter than them.
Yep.
I'm always one step
Or
fucking ahead.
lazier.
I'm not lazy. I was eating dinner. I worked my ass off all day.
You're black.
I deserve
You're
dinner,
lazy.
motherfucker. Bitch. I gotta say that. I forgot to say that. You know, I was today years old when I found out Spite was black.
Who?
Spite.
Who's Spite?
Spite, the fucking Cerberus VTuber, the one that had the fucking beef with Silvervale.
Oh.
She's
No.
black.
Oh, that makes more sense.
Yeah, she apparently posted an IRL pic this afternoon on fucking Twitter. You know,
Well,
the
because,
VTuber versus
almost
IRL. And of course,
it's
she's
maybe
fucking...
because a lot of VTubers are sharing her IRL picture now, even Bao.
Yep, and they're all getting fucking backlash for it.
Yeah,
Which honestly is a nothing
dude.
burger, because who cares? But at the same time, it's like, yeah, we get it. You're all e-girls. We all figured that out already, by the way.
It's not like Bao's face being already circulating for a while, though.
Apparently, her face has been out there for years.
I seen a picture literally of Bao and Nerissa when they were younger before, right before.
That's what I'm
starting
saying.
YouTube.
Yeah.
It's been for years. We already know how they looked.
Exactly. So why do people act like
I mean,
it's a big
Nerissa's
deal
fucking
now?
pretty
Why
as fuck.
does it even matter now what she looks like? The only difference now is that she lost some weight.
I mean, good for her, though. But yeah,
I guess. Yeah. Go misogynist bitch, but that's that point.
good for her, I guess. Whatever the fuck works
Yeah,
for her.
good for Spike too with her big old black titties.
I mean,
Trying to see
Chocolate
why
Milk has
her
to
and
come
Silvervale
from
had issues
somewhere.
now.
I mean, chocolate milk has to come from somewhere.
Yeah, no, that's not how that works. That's not how any of this works. Oh, but then somebody fucking decided to basically say all VTubers who aren't fucking Leaflet, Banana Juju, apparently Shoe on Head, which has nothing to do with fucking VTubers, but okay.
What's Shoe on? Remember, English is not my first language. What's Shoe on Head?
Shoe on Head, yeah.
What is that? What's that?
Shoe on Head is a YouTuber that's been around since 2014, who's kind of who's a liberal, but she also doesn't like the shit liberals do.
Oh yeah.
So she talks shit about liberals and pretty much everybody else. She's actually a fucking really good, like she's a decently good person. She's a mother and shit now too and everything.
Nice.
She's married to like a political dude. But nah,
good for her.
They fucking try to put out a Shoe on Head in the same boat as fucking Kersha and fucking Smugglana and all them, and then say, oh well, only VTubers or only streamers who are like skinny girls or whatever should be on the platform or whatever. All the obese chicks and this, that, and the third need to go type shit. Like, the whole fucking post was retarded. And then you go and look at their fucking their Twitter history, and they were a former female to male trans person that fucking transitioned. They have felony charges against them. They lost their 7 kids and just got them back recently.
7 kids.
Had 7 kids. Lost them. Got them back after they detransitioned. And you're talking shit about other people. Like, let those with the fucking first, without sin cast first stone there, honey bunny.
I'm just trying to process
you're full
everything.
of sin.
It's like you're, bro. It's like
and the best part is they use the Bible as well as the reason why whores, fat people, and this is that and the third don't have a right to be streamers.
I've never heard. I never thought Jesus was a VTuber.
You cannot make this shit up. You cannot make this shit up. It's like, bro, you do realize Jesus literally didn't care who you were. He fucking literally, he literally was fucking lived with a fucking a whore named Mary. Like, fuck.
Yeah. He was next to these.
Did he marry her actually?
No, they were not married.
Oh,
that's something that they created for the Da Vinci Code and shit.
No, I actually thought there was like a thing where he dated her or they were together or something.
No, it's not. They didn't have it.
She was just one of his followers.
Yeah, it was just one of his followers. One of the most loyal, though, because then when he died, he like, when he resurrected, he said, "Take care of my mom." That's a huge amount of trust, though.
Yeah, and she was a whore, and he still accepted her for who she was, and fucking, she became one of his disciples. Like, and you're gonna sit there and talk shit and act like you know what the fuck you're talking about, or that
Like,
you know anything
bro,
about
which-
Jesus.
Jesus was
Jesus would look
literally
down on
next
half you
to-
people and be like, "Nah, that's not what I had taught you, kids. What the fuck is wrong with you?"
Exactly.
Jesus would be like, "Yo, y'all going to hell. What the fuck is wrong with you people?" Like, for real. Man, I had to send you the fucking link to the post because I fucking went off on that person because that pissed me the fuck off. Because Q sent it to me, and she's like, "This is the first time on the internet I fucking hate somebody," and I'm like, "Huh?" So I go and look at it, and I'm like, "Oh, I get why now."
Bro,
Like,
literally, what you were explaining about this person is like, bro, are you describing a freaking ass cartoon, like a comic cartoon?
That's what
that
it
is
sounds like to
literally
me.
It literally decided for me to despise them.
I told fucking, or I put on my fucking reply to them. I was like, dude, if you literally let somebody on Discord fucking condition you to become detrans and transitioning into a fucking and shit to the point where you lost your fucking kids, you got mental issues, and your kids don't deserve you don't deserve your kids. My friend said that was hypocritical of me to say, but I'm like, not really, because I'm just being honest, and I don't have kids, so how was that hypocritical of me to say it? Because I stooped to their level, because they pissed me off? I'll stoop to anyone's level, you piss me off. I'm petty.
Oh shit, that was so.
The difference is I can admit I'm petty. Hang on, I got something for you. Where are you? I'm throwing it your
Trying
way.
to run from Storm because Storm will literally kill me.
Well, I'm throwing it your way.
Thank you.
I also have med kits.
I take this Sprite for now.
Take this too.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think it's I don't think it's hypocritical for me to stoop to someone's level when their level's already fucking in the dirt.
Yeah.
Especially when you're trying to post holier than thou and disrespect every fucking person that I'm friends with. Like, fuck you. I don't give a shit. Because people act like being fucking overweight is something, is like a fucking thing that you can just
the community
control.
is like the amount of misogynistic VTubers there are, and the amount of teams they have that they are being literally attacked, and they just.
And it's so funny because now everybody's doing this fucking video series or talking online about, oh, VTuber mean girls and we need to stop mean girls. It's like, it's never gonna stop because you people can't just shut the fuck up about it. The more you bring it up, the more you have to do it.
They will never stop because you know what? Because dudes
like, too fucking good.
For some reason, like that type of woman, so they're gonna keep making
because they
money.
all peaked in high school. They realize there's a market for fucking marginally attractive females behind fucking hot looking avatars, and just pretend to have a cute personality, and people will love you. And yeah,
exactly.
Easy peasy lemon squeezy.
Yeah. Again,
you don't have to be nice to people because you have your own little army of fucking simps who will just fucking protect you no matter what, even if you're wrong.
Me.
I see him. He's running. No, he's not. Brother, where you going? Brother, you got any loops? Brother, where's your loops? Fuck me.
Brother, give me some hoops. I need to read. Why the fuck did I need to read so much?
Rebooting.
Yeah, I know. And
oh, someone's throwing grenades at us. Run. Run for your life.
We don't have a wheel.
He's following.
I know.
Let him.
And we don't have a wheel.
You don't have a wheel. I don't have health. That is what it is.
No. I have 2 big health packs now, so I can give you that when we get into the safety spot. Around here, it's gonna be okay. Jumbo, we're getting next to the corner, by the way. Take this.
My father, Geno, is back. After all this time.
Did you know our father Geno is back?
He always wanted perfect control. And until he gets it,
If you didn't, you do now.
lifting us. Provoking Foundation, hurting Jones, stoking distrust between our allies.
Look at them all fighting over there.
We've been feeling hopeless because he wants us to.
That's an NPC, by the way.
He likes taking
I'm aware,
everything
but there's
away
someone next to
until
it.
he's the
But never
only
mind.
answer left.
On the stone, they are like
Not
3.
letting my father win. I'll give everything to make sure that doesn't happen.
Pretty much just
How the
practicing my
fuck is
shots on
bullets are like
NPC.
dark and heavy?
Bitch, how much HP do you have? I can die already.
Brother.
Over there.
This, yeah, makes sense. There. A3.
John Wick, you gonna shoot somebody? Come on, bro. Do
Bro, there's something, please. Johnny, please.
Johnny boy, kill him.
Okay, I have to go over here.
I mean, you could use the launch pad. Okay.
Yeah, I just didn't want to do the launch pad. This projector is very predictable, though. Oh, go, Joe.
How? Okay. He just purpled me.
Ah, nice try though, bitch.
On me, by the way.
I just killed somebody.
Yeah, below you. There is
Are they
Gojo
nearby?
right next to you.
I figured. You better run, pussy.
I'm getting shot out, by the way. Yep.
Ah, man. Game with the fucking... I hate it. I hate it so fucking much. Every time I go to throw the fucking thing down, I crouch. I don't know fucking why. And that bitch shouldn't have hit me with that shot, but okay. Is what it is. Oh, look at Gold Batman. That would have been nice to have. I'll buy it. Oh well.
I think I can do one more if you do one more.
Yeah, I'll do one more. I'm calling it. I'm probably gonna hop on fucking Power Roll for a little bit. Still haven't done a single fucking Grim yet.
No.
Want a Batman? I extracted my llama, right? Or, yeah, the Fueling. Alright, I'll bring the Fueling again so I can finish it. And I think I'm gonna call it to this one. Fucking 740. What's crazy, yesterday, I was fucking sitting there, I ended streaming like 4 or 5 o'clock or some shit, and then I went to go fucking do shit, lay down, just relax. Somehow I was still up by at 11 o'clock, trying to figure out why the fuck it wasn't like 2 o'clock in the morning already. I was like, bro, why is the days going by slower now? Feels like it's starting to get closer to fucking... Yeah, it's getting pretty close to fall, so it's gonna start getting fucking... Things are gonna start feeling darker sooner, or days are just gonna get slower. Right. We can go to, I'd say go to Golden Grove, but fucking there'd be a lot of people there.
There will be a lot of people.
I'm gonna go to Lifty.
Okay.
Last game, Lifty. Ooh. Oh yeah, I sent you that post I was talking about.
Alright.
Hey, listen to how hypocritical that shit is. Or read how hypocritical that shit is, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fucking peanut, bro. Fucking peanut.
At the same time. By the way, Q, your mic is probably not working again.
But she'll be
Okay,
back.
sure,
She's
whatever.
probably trying to figure out her mic. She wants to update Windows again.
Probably.
Every time I update Windows. Last time I updated Windows, it didn't even change my mic on my computer. It changed my fucking NVIDIA broadcast mic to my camera, and I'm like, what the fuck?
Oh.
Yeah. Everything else worked fine, but that's the only thing it changed.
Oh. Oh, my keyboard's not working.
was en route to help with your little
Oh, that's not
operation
good.
when my
I can
net
move?
was
What?
sabotaged.
My okay. Some,
You
my
good?
game bugged.
Something you want to say?
I'm bugged.
Oh,
Just that
Bro.
like super
I can just
bugged.
turn around. My keyboard is not working anymore. I cannot walk.
I would hate for your loyalty.
Okay, my keyboard is working, but I cannot move at all.
Trust me.
It looks like you're about to get booted because it looks like you're running in place.
They buried themselves under General hubris. I've moved
I'm gonna try to get rid of my sprite character to running. What?
Good to know.
Hang on, I'm coming down.
I'm gonna try to get rid of my sprite just in case.
Yeah,
Here,
my
so
screen
you
you're
can get
running
my
in
sprite.
place.
Oh yeah, I cannot do anything. My game just glitched. Okay, I guess the game decided it's good time for leave.
I guess so. Motherfucker. Yep. It just booted you.
Yeah.
Alright, I'll take your follow and extract it for you.
Thank you. Again, I guess the game said it's enough for me.
I guess so. Fucking bullshit.
The thing is, I cannot even close the game. I'm alt 4 and it does not close it.
Huh. Maybe your computer crashed.
Yeah, no, I can actually. I literally cannot. I'm changing tabs and everything. It's working. It's the game that is not responding even for on all the 4.
Quick little fish, huh?
That's weird.
Now, I want to
Yeah.
see what one of these looks like powered up.
Okay, you have my sprites, right?
Yeah. Hang on.
Return to lobby.
I just got to survive against 2v fucking 1.
Yeah, the game stopped.
Fucking Fortnite, man. Every
Oh,
time.
Thank
Hello.
you.
Now we can hear you.
Yeah, Discord with no routes.
Yeah, well, it's new. Doesn't surprise me at all. Yeah, we're getting ready to get off Fortnite anyway. We're gonna end the stream and go ahead and jump on Power for a little bit.
I just needed to be and hear people talk around me. It's been one of those days.
Oh.
Yeah, thanks for sending me that post, by the way, because I went ham on that idiot. So much so, someone told me I was probably being a little stupid down to their level, and I'm like, I don't give a fuck. I'll get in that dirt. I don't give a shit. Like, would you insult everybody I know and care about, and then fucking when you're a fucking convict, hypocrite, fucking psychopath? Like, fuck you.
That just makes no sense to me. How you say you're for women, but then you
But you were trans.
fucking go off of on all women who might have issues. Like,
Yeah, and the fun fact that they were trans at one point and detransitioned, and they lost their
Okay,
7
let me read the
kids in the
post.
process.
The first thing,
So,
what the fuck? You have 7 kids, girl. Close your legs.
not only that, but the fact that you're like fucking talking about people who are literally problematic streamers and who are all right-wing psychopaths, like Leaflet,
obesity.
Leaflet of all people, bro. She's a fucking
what set me
autistic
off.
spurg. And she let kids get groomed in her Discord. Like, what? Yeah, I know that's what that set you off. That set me off too.
Yeah. That really fucking.
It wasn't
set
even
me
just
off.
that, it was all of it that set me off, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee you that bitch had 7 kids. She ain't skinny. She's just projecting.
I'll be in touch.
People always project on Twitter. It's fucking hilarious to watch, honestly. But DY don't want to go on Twitter that much anymore.
I mean,
Kim?
I agree only on the part of the not the weird sociopaths, not the attention-seeking men haters. I agree on that part, but the rest, what the fuck?
But what's an attention-seeking man hater? Because anybody who even supported men back in the day were considered fucking internal misogynist, or what was it? Not eternal incels, eternal misogynists.
Internalized misogyny, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Like women nowadays be trying to support men, and everybody tells them they're fucking doing it for the clout and shit. Which, yeah, sure they are. Most of them are. Almost all of them are. But you're no better if you're sitting there trying to call out other people when you clearly probably do it yourself. I don't agree with a damn thing she says. She sounds like an unhinged retard.
Bro, this bitch is using AI for everything. Like, try.
Exactly. That's another thing. You're using AI. Meanwhile, AI is destroying the environment. You dumb fuck.
That.
I've literally been talking with people like outside of like the internet, like in my world, my life and shit, and they're planning on building a fucking AI facility where I live. No, they're not. I'm not letting that shit happen. I'm not dealing with that noise pollution, that water pollution. Like literally, I've seen what the water pollution looks like. It ain't good.
Yep.
These like I said before, and I'll say again, I'm kind of on the fence when it comes to certain things, like, you know, AI learning for fucking using it for like, you know, advancing technology and shit to like help people with dementia or other disorders and problems. But I'm not really for it with fucking people just spamming it all the time to make fucking art and shit and ruin the environment because they're fucking too lazy to go fucking around and draw.
Not hard to draw.
I know. I'm planning on getting a tablet eventually. And then someone's gonna have to just start showing me how to draw better. Give me some schematics or something.
I'm just checking the posts this bitch is doing. Like, some of them are not really that hard to make.
A lot of the shit that they get made is not hard to make, and it's like, bro, you're just fucking. See, it is so hard for me to be like, oh, I'm against it because, like, I would be a hypocrite because I use it to fuck around and have fun. But at the same time, it's like I understand where people are coming from, not wanting to spend that much money on an entitled artist on Twitter. But at the same time, I can understand where people are coming from, where they don't want their fucking drinking water being polluted and fucking all that shit. Because neither would I. Oh shit, I found a Galaxy Batman.
Wow.
Yeah, that's true. It's been a while.
So, like, I'm on the fence, but I'm on the fence in a good way. 'Cause I still want legislation. That's my key thing, is I want legislation.
I haven't caught one of you guys yet? What? That's weird.
We need more legislation, especially if they're thinking about opening fucking factories, or not factories, fucking nuclear power plants to power AI. Like, no. We need the nuclear power plants to power
Cities.
our world, not fucking some bullshit Silicon Valley crap. Like, fuck Silicon Valley. we need nuclear power so we can replace the fucking power that's costing everybody thousands and thousands of dollars a month to fucking keep their power, their electricity on. And who the fuck cares about all that bullshit?
My eggs. I forgot. I got a mutated egg. Oh, I'm so happy.
Oh yeah, I have to check my eggs.
Oh, you missed an awesome Backrooms EA stream the other day, Q.
Oh.
Yeah, I was playing a new Backrooms game. It's fun as fuck.
Oh, by the way,
I need to get Yumi, Vosh,
yeah, if you need to make like some of the cakes for the thingies, I have now the called on the marmoset form.
You mean Memorist? She's a Marmoset.
Yeah, marmoset. Yeah, marmoset is an app for.
Sure.
I've already collected all those eggs. I have so many Memorists. I have so many. There's too fucking many.
Yeah, I have literally just one of the advanced forms of like or the eggs just
Honestly,
for
that's why I'm not
normal
even trying to try this match. I'm about to die anyway. Back.
I'm so
I extracted
excited.
as
I
many as
want
I
this
could.
large. Cannot wait to what this flippin' mutate egg is.
I actually got quite a few nice mutated eggs, so if you want some of them to breed, just tell me and I can borrow them to you.
I'm already at the actual final boss on the game. I'm just waiting for everybody to be around to do it together.
I still need to go to the World Tree.
Also, I helped friggin' Q beat the whale, so she's at the World Tree now. I haven't beaten the World Tree or the whale yet.
No, I haven't even got to the World Tree. I'm just getting like. Right now, I'm the
kill the
proof
whale.
that your strength to Penthelis.
We should kill the whale together.
trying-
Me and
I
Q
have-
became fucking dive bombers on that fucker.
I showed him what my chicken can do.
Yeah, her chicken actually kind of fucking wrecked him, but I finished everything.
Yeah, because
was
on
amazing,
one of my mutated eggs, I got an Adrolon that has Immortality, Swift, Lavish Hospitality, and Artisan.
Yeah.
Then I also got, let me, where the fuck I put him?
Wait, where's my Verdash? I know I had a.
I don't know where anything is. I haven't been on the game in like 3 days. I have to pay the fucking service that keep it on.
Oh yeah, I have your Verdash. Sorry, I took it to breed him. Let me bring it back to you.
Okay, I was like, I could have sworn I put the Verdash in here.
Yeah, I've been stealing some of your some of people's pal just to breed them for the stats, and then I'm giving back. I think I forgot just bring yours.
It's fine because it had like Diamond Body in and my
Yeah.
Immortality. Okay,
Mortality,
I just
yeah,
wanted
I know which one it is.
I wanted to make sure I wasn't going
A
to say. I
few
was
of
like,
them mastered,
I
so.
had one.
But yeah, I got it because of that. I want to breed them to see what else I can get. So
Yeah, I know you're perfectly fine. I don't care.
I carry off. Also, I think I think I gave you the Soline with the Legend of Mastery Fasting.
Yeah. My Verdash, hello. You going into the breeding center again? Come on.
Yeah, I have 82 mastered now. Yeah, I think that's enough for today. I'm gonna call
Oh wait, who was in here already? I know I have you. Where's the other one?
Thank you for coming by. I'm gonna end stream here. I don't think I'm gonna raid today. I don't feel like a lot of extra shit. And actually having to conversate with people. I'm just kind of antisocial, except for my friends. Anyways, I'll see you guys later.
Also, let
Have
me
a
give
good